Families without a home internet connection will be eligible to access free broadband for a year, Labor has revealed, or will reveal soon. Up to 30,000 eligible families would be identified by schools, state education departments and local community organisations and then run through communications provider NBN Co. Joining me live now, Shadow Education Minister Tanya Plibersek. Tanya, good to see you. Thanks for your time this morning. We just touched on it there, but how's this plan going to work?
Well, we know from our period of remote learning that schools have got really good at working with kids across the internet. Kids have learnt to use the resources of the internet to support their learning, but there are tens of thousands of Australian families that can't afford an internet connection. So this is an effort to make sure that those kids are connected to the internet. We don't want to go back to remote learning, but even with the homework that kids are doing now, the connection to the internet makes a huge difference to their ability to complete their work. So we'd work with NBN Co and the internet providers to make sure that those families had an internet connection so that their kids can do their learning.
So how did you come to 30,000?
Well, we have an estimate from the Australian Bureau of Statistics of the number of families with children under the age of 15 that don't have an internet connection. We saw that the NBN did actually have a program during remote learning. Sadly, too many families didn't know about that. So this is our estimate of the need that's out there. But of course, if we find that the need is greater, that's something that we'll have to revisit.
Okay, and would all of that have to be costed in?
Well, this is actually a pretty modest cost. We're talking around $10 million. If you look at the huge budget of the NBN, the costs that are associated with rolling out the NBN, this is really a pretty modest cost for a really big impact. Like, I had a girl in my electorate who, during remote learning, couldn't get the internet at home. She went and sat outside the local library trying to use the free internet through the walls of the library. She got moved along by police because she didn't have a valid reason to be out during lockdown. I've heard of families who just gave up on remote learning because the kids couldn't access the internet, they couldn't do their work, they were competing to use mum's one phone, mobile data's too expensive. It's a real shame when kids miss out like that. And now that we've made that transition to remote learning, now that schools are so good at offering resources from, all different sorts of sources to those kids online, we don't want kids falling further behind because they can't get an internet connection.
Okay, now we are in the unofficial beginning of the election campaign. Scott Morrison says he is the underdog. Is he?
Well, Scott Morrison will say anything to be re-elected, won't he? So I think pretty much everything he says from now on you take with a grain of salt. It's an important time now, I think, for the Australian community to have a look at Scott Morrison's government and ask themselves, do they feel better off? I mean, COVID aside, look at what's happened to wages, for example. Families are still struggling with the cost of living going up and wages flatlining or even going backwards. On the other hand, you've got Labor leader Anthony Albanese out talking about the policies that would make a big difference to Australian families, would see job security, decent pay, increasing wages when you work hard, cheaper childcare, better schools, better hospitals, better aged care. That's what's going to make a difference to Australian families. And I do hope people are turning their minds to the next election because we've got a really great offering for Australian families.
Well, Labor does struggle federally and has done ever since World War II, struggle to win, I mean. What is different in your view this time around? What gives you hope that it will be different?
Oh, well, there's two things that are happening at the moment. People are looking at Scott Morrison and asking themselves, is he there when I need him? And, you know, the bushfires, the COVID response that he handed over to the states, the flawed vaccine rollout, flawed response to quarantine, they look at Scott Morrison and go, he's when the going gets tough, he gets going. That's one thing. On the other hand, we've got a positive leader with a vision for the nation that includes strong jobs growth, wages going up as productivity increases, and all of those social services that make life better for Australian families. Good quality, more affordable childcare, great schools for your kids, a decent aged care system for older Australians who deserve that respect as they age. That's what's on offer here.